Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're skipping the usual pleasantries because, honestly, we have a lot of ground to cover, and we are going to dive straight into a genuinely mind-bending philosophical mystery surrounding artificial intelligence. We're looking at a deeply fascinating paper by Dawson Preethi Elaparuma Arachige, and it completely reframes how we look at generative AI. If you think the current debates about AI are just about, technology or copyright or kids cheating on their essays, you're in for a shock. The author's central intention in this paper is to prove that AI isn't just a new tool we're using, it is a philosophical mirror, and what it's reflecting back at us, well, it's deeply, deeply unsettling.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this really is the question of the decade, right? Was this written by a human or by AI? We're seeing this intense modern cultural panic everywhere right now. Schools are completely scrambling to deploy AI detectors, the publishing industry is suddenly demanding all these strict authorship disclosures, and even just hanging out online, we're constantly suspicious. Like, am I talking to a real person right now, or just a really good bot? We are utterly obsessed with catching AI in the act of writing. But the author points out something totally crucial here. This surface-level panic, it's actually concealing a much, much deeper anxiety.
To understand what's really going on, the paper introduces a massive twist. This whole panic we're experiencing isn't actually about machines getting too smart. Not at all. It's about the terrifying realization that our own autonomous human creativity might have literally always been an illusion. To prove this, the author points us way back to 1967, to the famous literary theorist Roland Barthes. Barthes famously declared the death of the author. He argued that an author isn't some magical, sovereign creator just pulling entirely original ideas out of a vacuum. Instead, all writing is just a recombination of linguistic and cultural materials that already exist out there in society. Language precedes us. So, as Barthes argued, meaning doesn't come from an author's pure, untainted intention, it's really just a remix of society's existing text.
Now, to really see how this connects to something like ChatGPT, we have to completely strip away the magic of AI. People so often think AI actually understands language the way that you and I do. It absolutely doesn't. The paper traces the root of modern AI back even further, to 1948, to a guy named Claude Shannon and his information theory. Shannon didn't care at all about what messages actually meant. He cared about the statistical properties of symbols. He discovered that language has these measurable, totally predictable patterns of expectation. Like if I say to you, the sun rises in the, you instantly know the next word is highly likely to be east and it's definitely not going to be elephant. Shannon laid the mathematical groundwork that basically said, hey, language can be treated simply as predictable patterns. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how modern large language models, like the ones powering all the generative AI we use today, actually function behind the scenes. They operate on what's called the transformer architecture. This looks at insanely vast amounts of text and simply tries to predict the next token. If the prompt is, the ocean waves crashed against the AI does not have a beautiful mental image of an ocean in its head. It just knows, statistically, that the word shore has a 42% chance of coming next. Rocks has a 25% chance, and so on. It is purely 100% mathematical prediction. It is completely devoid of any actual symbolic meaning. Which brings us to this brilliant theoretical convergence in the paper. On side A, we've got Claude Shannon's statistical language models, which totally removed semantic meaning from information transmission. And on side B, we have Roland Barthes' literary theory, which completely removed semantic meaning from the author's original intent. Do you see the overlap happening here? Barthes said human writing is just a tissue of quotations remixed from society. Well, ChatGPT is literally a machine built to remix the tissue of quotations it absorbed during its training on vast collections of human data. Generative AI is essentially the physical computational realization of post-structuralist literary theory. It's wild.
Let's move to and see how this builds into our modern obsession. Because if Barthes is right and the author is theoretically dead, why on earth do we still care so much about who wrote something? The paper turns to the philosopher Michel Foucault for the answer to this one. Foucault basically argued that authorship today is just an institutional function. We use the concept of an author to assign legal responsibility, to enforce copyright laws, to create ownership, and to generate authority. We obsess over whether an AI or a human wrote a text, mostly for legal and economic reasons, not because it actually changes the words on the page. We just really need someone to sue, or, someone to pay. But honestly, that economic explanation, it doesn't fully capture that visceral, uneasy feeling we get from AI, does it?
So if AI is functionally just doing what we humans have always done, remixing pre-existing language according to statistical patterns, why does it creep us out so much? Why does it feel so profoundly uncanny to read a deeply emotional, heartbreaking poem knowing it was written by a machine? The author of the paper argues that to find that out, we have to take a deep dive into psychoanalysis. To demystify this psychological anxiety, the paper introduces the work of psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, specifically his concept of the symbolic order. Lacan argued that none of us invent language. We don't. We are born into a pre-existing network of language, laws, and culture. We just inherit it. You don't own the words you speak. They belong to the broader culture. Think about the crazy parallel here. Just as a human is born into the symbolic order, a large language model is born into its training data. Both of us are completely dependent on a vast, pre-existing environment of inherited signifiers.
But Lacan goes even further, and this is where it gets really interesting for our whole AI debate. He introduces this idea of the split subject. See, we love to think of ourselves as these unified, highly authentic creators completely in control of what we're writing. Lacan says, yeah, that's nonsense. Humans are divided by deeply unconscious desires. Our speech is constantly mediated by slips of the tongue, unexpected associations, and hidden motives we aren't even aware of. We are never the fully sovereign, in-control creators we like to imagine ourselves to be. We are, in a very real sense, spoken by language just as much as we speak it.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it pinpoints the true fundamental difference between us and the machine. If we both just inherit and remix language, what actually separates us? Lacan's answer is desire. Human subjectivity is organized around this missing lack. We write because something is missing in us. We seek recognition. We mourn. We fear death. Human writing is haunted by desire. A machine, however, it has no unconscious. It doesn't experience any sort of lack. It seeks absolutely zero recognition. Machine writing is haunted only by probability.
And this leads us to a fascinating Lacanian concept called object petit a, which is basically the elusive object cause of desire. For us humans, there is always this missing piece we are instinctively searching for to try and fill an absence. When we read a text, we instinctively search for the human subject behind those words. We look for a soul, a desire, some sort of intention. Our current cultural obsession with running literally everything through AI detectors. It isn't just about academic integrity. It is a desperate Lacanian search for this missing, desiring author behind the generated words. When we encounter AI text, we are confronting a literal void, and honestly, it terrifies us.
The paper then brings in philosopher Slavoj Žižek to explain exactly how society handles this terror. Žižek argues that much of our intense debate over AI authorship is actually functioning as a massive defense mechanism. We are protecting an ideology, the fantasy of human exceptionalism and pure originality. If a machine can write a beautiful, moving sonnet just by doing complex math, well, that completely threatens our deeply held belief that human creativity is something magical and totally unique. We demand to know if a human wrote it because secretly, we are just trying to protect our own fragile egos.
So, the crucial point is this realization right here. The whole debate about AI authorship is just a reaction to our own insecurities. The dead author, this romantic idea of the heroic, completely original human creator that Barthes theoretically killed off in the 60s, is suddenly being brought back to life by us. Why? Because contemporary culture simply cannot easily abandon the fantasy of our own sovereignty. The paper's author intended to show us that AI acts as a mirror, and what it reflects back is the mechanical, inherited, and deeply unoriginal nature of so much of our own human language.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply profound question to ponder. The machine has no unconscious. It has no desire and no lack. So who is actually writing when AI writes? Is it the engineers who built it, the tech companies? Or is it the millions of collective human voices trapped inside the training data? The paper's brilliant conclusion is this. AI didn't kill the author. Roland Barthes killed the author over 50 years ago. Generative AI is simply the tool that is finally forcing us all to inspect the corpse. Next time you read something and wonder if a machine wrote it, maybe the better question to ask yourself is, how much of a machine were we when we taught it how to speak? Think about that. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning everything.